Vladik Brutal is a bloody and violent half-like that was brought to us by a lone developer known as Narco Games, which I believe is now known as Brutal Software. Taking lots of heavy inspiration from Half-Life 1 and 2, Vladik Brutal is essentially Russian Half-Life, from drop-down weapon selection menus based on number keys to similar story beats and the general sense of progressing from one part of the game world to the next in a natural way. The inspirations are very obvious. Overall, I would say that the homage was done very well, especially for a single developer. I mean, seriously, the fact that a single person was able to craft a lengthy first-person shooter campaign with this level of detail and scale is astonishing. Graphically, while being a bit of a mixed bag, this game looks pretty darn good for the most part, and there are also lots of graphical settings to customize in the options menu. This is obviously a big plus, and while this game was developed in Unreal Engine 4, and you can tell that it certainly has that look, there is enough effort put into the art direction to give Vladik Brutal a distinctive style. Much of the architecture is certainly brutalist, and the underground locations are packed from floor to ceiling in some instances with fleshy growths, often with bodies hanging down in cramped corridors. The atmosphere can certainly be quite eerie at times with the lighting, as well as being helped by great sound design that incorporates distant moans, growls, and gunfire. When it comes to the story, it isn't the most original, to be honest. You play as a Russian prisoner who is sent to pull some levers in a top-secret laboratory. Yeah, what does that remind you of? The lever pulling initiates an explosion that for some reason brings about the rapid mutations of several people into monsters, primarily of the zombie-adjacent variety. You are then blamed for the disaster and become public enemy number 1, with the military and police forces now hunting you down. What follows is a gameplay loop that involves a mix of light puzzle solving, boss fights, and lots of combat, with some vehicle driving thrown in for good measure, a la Half-Life 2. Underground settings are dominated by an oppressive atmosphere in loads of the aforementioned zombie-adjacent enemies, which admittedly are used way more than they should be, and after a while I would groan a bit whenever I would enter another underground section. These aren't the worst zombie-like enemies because there are different enemy types, like near-invisible zombie mutants, mother zombies that spawn smaller creatures that rush you and explode, and some larger bosses that, while they are the simple shoot it until it dies type of fights, are pretty enjoyable to put down. Except for one. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Stinkworm. Above ground combat encounters revolve around fights with soldiers and police officers. The enemy AI is, unfortunately, pretty stupid, as the zombies and soldiers behave in pretty similar ways, that being they either rush the player in order to deal a melee attack, stand back and shoot, or rush the player while shooting. It's not the best combat system in the world, but the shooting feels so great in this game that I honestly don't care all that much. The weapon feedback is phenomenal, with loud, bassy gunshots that combine with the visual feedback of blowing off enemies' heads and limbs amidst a shower of blood. The weapons you have at your disposal include the classic crowbar, but this is obviously not the main draw, as your pistol, assault rifles, shotguns, magnum, revolver, experimental energy weapon, RPG, sniper rifle, grenades, and Molotovs are all a heap of fun to use. The shotguns and magnum in particular are so devastating, and absolutely eviscerate every enemy in the game while sounding like the hammer of the gods. This game's sniper isn't the best since it is lever action and every shot requires a reload, making this one of the weakest tools in the sandbox. In fact, you can't reload while scoped in, and if you play this game, you'll understand why that becomes kind of annoying. But another weapon that is actually very good are the Molotov cocktails. These are so much fun, and I also just want to showcase their power here. Despite the fantastic gunplay, there are unfortunately some things that hold this game back. I already mentioned the pretty stupid enemy AI and the over-reliance on combat with zombies, but there are also some pretty terrible character models. The enemy models aren't too bad, but the characters that you actually interact with look pretty awful. And some odd aspects of the game's story, like the mentioning of the fact that the player character apparently gained a Wolverine-like regeneration ability that has absolutely no impact on the gameplay. And it's also mentioned very late in the game, and when it happened I was just like, what? It's very weird. So the writing isn't the best. The game's length also could have been stripped back a bit, as it is pretty bloated. However, with the game being developed by one person, this is certainly somewhat forgivable. But these are just the things that keep Vladik Brutal from being great. It is a good game. I want to make that very clear. In fact, I would say that it is very good, and definitely very impressive, and I do hope to see more from this developer in the future. If you're a fan of Half-Life, I think you would enjoy this game, and I would ultimately recommend that you play it. Think of it as a blend of Half-Life 1 and 2 with brutal gunplay that is reminiscent of Brutal Doom and the modern Wolfenstein games. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe, and dislike it if you absolutely hated it. As always, enjoy the rest of your day.